You're about to learn everything there is to learn about the Italian game. If you watch the full video, I promise you, you don't need to buy any course or watch any more videos on the Italian. First opponent is in the 500 region. We're only going to be playing the Italian game for this entire speed run. Let's develop the knight, hit the pawn. He guards the pawn, and this is the Italian game. Now, this is the two knights defense that he's playing. Now, I'm not going to be playing any fried liver attack because I think I'm going to try the fried liver attack, but not for the first video. Knight takes e4 is the third. Here we're going to play the move pawn to d3, just guarding the pawn. And from here, we're just going to be focusing on development. This is typical Italian game stuff. We develop our knight to c3, castle or king, bishop e3 or g5. Now the opponent plays d6. Definitely wouldn't play d6 in that situation because it blocks in his dark squared bishop. Now it looks like he's trying to pin my knight, but one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is the pin on the knight does not work if our king is not yet castled. So let me just continue with my development. Now I have 3 out of 4 pieces developed. He developed his bishop, and the reason why I say the pin does not work when our king is not yet castled is I'm actually able to just play h3. The moment the opponent puts a piece on your half of the board, you want to immediately chase away that piece. Now, once I play h3 and hit the bishop, if he takes my knight, giving up a bishop for a knight, that's on him. But if he pulls the bishop back to h5, I will be able to play a move like pawn to g4 and then chase his bishop again. Taking on g4, also a mistake. Don't be giving up your bishops for knights in the opening stage of the game. He finally develops his bishop though, so he's developing his pieces. I'm also gonna finish developing my pieces as well. And then he castled his king. So this is not bad. Black is not playing too bad. The only thing he did was giving up his bishop for a knight. Now, one thing I like to do is whenever my opponents castle on the king side, I like to castle on the queen side. This is going to make the game easier for you to play because the plans is just pawn storm. Once there's opposite side castles in chess, the plan is easy. I'm going to be pushing the pawns on this side, moving them forward, so that way I'm able to start an attack on the king. The opponent decided to play the move knight to d4. Not a bad move. He's putting a piece on my half of the board. It's very important that we look on the opponent's last move, though. What is it doing? It's attacking our queen. The queen has to move. Now, the funny thing is, G4 is actually G3 is actually the only square for my queen. But now I have my queen and my bishop pointing towards the opponent's king. Now, this is usually where persons start to make their mistakes because they're like, okay, it's obvious that we need to develop our minor pieces and castle the king. But what should we do after that? That's what I want to be helping you guys with. And this is where the planning aspect of things comes in. The opponent just play pawn to d5, and I've seen this a lot. So if you're 500, 600, 700, and you're still not able to count, then that's probably why your rating is so low because this is legit just counting. The guy just played d5. How many pieces do I have guarding the d5 square? One, two, three. How many pieces does he have guarding the d5 square? One, two. With that being said, he's just losing a pawn here. Guy almost tricked me. I almost played knight takes d5, but there's something in chess that is called the drawback principle, where before you move your piece, you have to check to see what the piece is doing. My knight is actually playing an important role guarding this fork on e2. So I'm just going to take with the pawn in this position. It's still a free pawn. His pawn on e5 is now unprotected. In like a lot of person likes to play moves like bishop to h6 because it threatens a checkmate on g7. Now, moves like bishop to h6, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to work, but it's a very cool idea. Now, bishop to b4, it's kind of obvious what my opponent is trying to do here. Like, he's basically trying to get rid of my knight, and then once I take, his knight gets to go to e2 with a fork. Now, there's a lot of stuff I could do to combat this. And the first one that I'm looking on is just taking a free pawn on e5. If he takes my knight, I could either take back his bishop and attack his knight, or I could either just take his knight on d4. Okay, bishop h6 actually doesn't work. It's a losing move. Knight f5 is going to be a winning move. So let's just take the free pawn on e5. Now we're ahead by 2 pawns. We're just going to be building up these small wins, and that's how we're going to be winning the game. So if he takes, I could either take and attack the knight, or I could take on d4. Both of these is going to be safe moves. And I still haven't forgot that I'm trying to attack him on the king side. So if I take like this, it's gonna give me double pawns. But where's he gonna put his knight? That's the okay, he's gonna check. But then once I move my king, where is he gonna put the knight? That's why I'm gonna take with the B pawn because now his knight is under attack and he's forced to move the knight. Well, not forced. He could play rook to E8 here, but he decided to check on E2. And I could simply just move my king to B2 here, but once I play king to D2, his knight is just trapped. Like there's no way in which he could get his knight out of this position. Best he could do, just attack my queen, which is what he did. Now I'm forced to move my queen out of the way. I'm just going to move my queen over to F5 here, actually, because I am still trying to hold on to my D5 pawn. And if you notice, he has two pieces attacking the pawn. I have two pieces guarding the pawn, and I'm able to count. He's attacking my queen again. I'm not going to just move my queen to some random squares. I'm going to put my queen on F3 because from F3, it still attacks the knight, but it keeps my D5 pawn guarded. Just being able to count is a fundamental important technique that you need to get good at chess. You also need to ensure that you know how to evaluate a position. Evaluating a position is basically the difference between the position. For example, the first difference in this position is the fact that I am ahead by a piece, but you could say my king is not the safest. So he could say he sacrificed the piece so that way he's exposing my king. Another difference that I'm seeing in this position is the fact that his rook is on an open file. My rook is not on an open file. He just played queen to d6. Maybe he wants to check here. Maybe he wants to check here. Who knows? The thing is, none of the checks aren't as dangerous because, yes, my king is a bit exposed, but a queen by itself is not going to checkmate my king. So, what I'm about to do is I want to start an attack on the dark squares. Why am I choosing the dark squares to start my attack? Because the opponent does not have a dark squared bishop. So I'm going to hit him with bishop to d4. Now I'm attacking this knight two times. He's only guarding the knight once. So he has to either move his knight away or add additional defenders to his knight, which he did not do. He plays a5. However, if I dare to touch the knight, queen to b4 is going to be a checkmate. So now it's not only his queen, it's the queen and the pawn. And we have to ensure that we look on the opponent's last move. Like any one of you guys watching this video, you're probably gonna just grab the knight and then just get checkmated. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prevent the threat of checkmate, and then his knight is still going to be under attack. Now, how I'm going to prevent queen to b4 is I'm going to just play rook to b1. My rook was not on an open file anyways. Now I get to put my rook on an open file. I'm attacking this pawn. There's no more queen b4, and his knight is still under attack. Okay, he plays queen to a3 check, and sad to say, this is actually just a blunder. Why is this a blunder? And he's attacking my king because his knight is hanging. And I'm not able to take the knight just yet, but I'm actually going to block the check and attack his queen at the same time. Now he has a queen and a knight under attack. Once he moves his queen out of the way, which he did not move the queen out of the way, I think guy just left the queen hanging. Guy just donated a queen. And you know what the funny thing is? I'm not even going to take the queen. Like, I don't want the queen. Whenever you see a good move, look for a better move. Instead of taking the queen, I'm going to let him have my rook. I'm going to play the move queen takes f6 in this position, continuing my attack on the dark squares. Now his queen is still under attack, and I'm threatening a checkmate. Checkmate that he's not able to prevent, by the way. So he tries to move his king. Yeah, he's trying to run away with his king. I'm trying to see if there's a checkmate here. Like I could check, the king has to go here. I could check here again, but then the king goes here. Now, another thing that I'm thinking of in this position is actually to play pawn to d6. And it's funny, like that's a queen, but why take the queen when you could go for a checkmate? Always go for the king if you have an attack on the king. So if I play pawn to d6 in this position, I will be threatening a checkmate on f7, and I'm also preventing the king from running away, which means queen to h8 will also be a threat of a checkmate. So let's play pawn to d6, threatening the mate, ignoring the fact that we have a free queen because checkmate ends the game. Now there's really nothing he could do to not get mated. He decided to take with the pawn. The whole idea, though, was to open this diagonal for my bishop. We're not going to be taking the queen. we're going to be playing the move queen takes pawn, and that's checkmate. We're going to be playing more Italian games against persons at the 600 level. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 600 region. Let's start by playing e4, and then he plays e5. Now we're just going to develop the knight, hit the pawn, he guards it, and we're going to be playing the Italian game. If they play the two knights defense, we play d3. If they play bishop c5, we play c3. Now, against someone in the 600 level, should we try the fried liver attack? Maybe we should. I mean, his rating is only 600. If it was anyone maybe over 1,000, then I wouldn't try the fried liver attack. But against someone in the 600 region, they don't know how to react to this opening. Because I'm basically threatening to fork on f7. He has to play the Traxler counter attack or d5 or knight takes e4 in this position. So if he does not find any of those moves, then I guess he's on his own. He plays bishop to c5. Ooh, he plays bishop to c5. Looks like he knows the Traxler counterattack, and he's in the 600 region. The good thing is, I know how to defeat the Traxler counterattack. When they play this, we don't take with the knight, we take with the bishop, forcing them to move the king. No, he's not going to be able to get castled. And the moment he moves the king, that's when I'm going to pull my bishop back. And then once I pull my bishop back, now I'll be able to fork on f7 if he allows me. So he plays d5. Yeah, he's really not trying to allow the knight going to the f7 square. But once they play d5, we're always going to be taking on d5 in this position. And the funny thing is, if the knight takes, there's still a version of the fried liver attack. Like, I could actually just put my knight on f7, and then if the king takes, I play queen to f3. But I'm gonna play queen to f3 immediately because it comes with check and I'm applying a lot of pressure to his knight. So if he moves the king, I take the knight and I win the game. If he blocks with the knight, however, I will be able to play knight to f7 and it's going to be a fork and I'm still winning the game. Ooh, he plays king to g8. My 600 level peeps, if you're watching this, I guess you could still try the fried liver attack because that's just a checkmate. But we're going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 700 level. So stick around. Our opponent is now 700. Let's go e4, e5. Let's develop the knight, hit the pawn. Okay, bishop to c5 was played. My opponent did not decide to defend the pawn, but I do not want to be greedy because we're still in the opening stage of the game. So let's continue with the regular, natural Italian game stuff. So he develops knight to guard the pawn. And now we're going to play pawn to c3. The whole idea here is to play pawn to d4 and get some good control over the center of the board. The main move in this position is knight to f6. I mean, it's a development move, assuming he's going to play a move like that. So he did play knight f6. Now we play d4. So the opponent has three pieces developed. We only have two pieces developed, but we basically already start our attack. And I really recommend that you guys play this line when you play the Italian game. For example, after e4, e5, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, then you play c3, followed by d4. So once he takes, I'll just take back, and I have very good control over the center of the board, and it is enough to win the game. So he took the pawn. The whole idea here is to take back the pawn, attack the bishop. He has to play bishop to b4 check. If he likes play a weird move like pulling the bishop back to b6, then he's basically giving me the tempo. And in this position, I have the tempo. And in order for him to regain the tempo, he has to find bishop to b4 check. Okay, that's a bad move. Black is already losing here, and we're already on move six. Now, it's very important that we do not play e5 here, because if we play e5, black is able to play d5, and that's a nice counter attack. To win this game, we're actually going to play d5. And yes, if you're going to be like, why are you moving the pawn so many times in the opening? Why is your king still not castled? Why is your knight not developed? Why is your bishop not developed? I am forcing the opponent to break principles. So I'm not falling behind. I'm forcing him to move the knight more than once in the opening stage of the game. I still have good control over the center. So, for example, if he puts his knight on the edge of the board, I pull my bishop back to d3, he's going to lose the knight. If he pulls his knight back to e7, I hit him with e5, and I'm forcing him to move the same piece more than once in the opening. So he puts his knight on the board. That's a dead knight, by the way. Remember, we don't want to have knights on the edge of the board. Obviously, I'm not gonna allow the knight to take the bishop. So I'm gonna pull the bishop back to d3, guarding my pawn on e4. And I want you to notice how the knight now has nowhere to go. Remember what we said about knights on the edge of the board? Knights on the rim is dim. He decides to castle the king, and it's already GG's. Knight has nowhere to go. The knight is trapped. We just play pawn to b4 and we trap the knight. So if you're an Italian game player, if they do not play the two knights defense and they decide to take their bishop out to c5, please play c3 followed by d4. It is just so aggressive and nobody below 1500 is able to handle it. Okay, so he plays queen to e8. He's basically trying to attack my pawn on e4 twice. I'm only guarding it once. And what I want to tell you guys is something that I've said many times. Whenever you see a good move, always look for a better one. I'm not in any rush to take the knight. The knight is dead. So let's just not lose our e4 pawn first. Let's play queen to e2. I'm trying to use my voice properly so you guys are not hearing the flu side of my voice, but you're gonna hear it eventually. Give me like 3 4 days and my voice is gonna get back to 100% normal. And then he sacrificed the bishop. Also a bad move because keep in mind, the knight is dead. He's just deciding that he wants to give me a bishop as well. No, I'm just going to take the free bishop. The knight is still dead. I'm still not going to lose my pawn on e4. Maybe he wants to check me on g4, but that's just a check. Like the knight by itself is not going to checkmate the king. So he checks my king. We literally just need to move the king out of the way. That is still a dead knight that has nowhere to go. So instead of me being ahead by only one piece, I'm about to be ahead by two pieces. So he plays pawn to c6. The knight still has nowhere to go. I'm still not necessarily in a rush to take the knight, but it's a free knight, and I'm not seeing what else I have, unless I want to trap this knight as well. Hmm. Actually, let's go with h3 here. Let's chase away this knight. Again, the knight is dead. If a piece is trapped, don't be in a rush to take it. Don't be too jumpy. But I have to be careful though. What I'm seeing here is knight to e4. I'm trying to deepen my voice if it's not obvious. Because if I talk normally, this is how it sounds. But if I deepen my voice, it sounds normal. So after knight e5, the knight is still dead. We go bishop to b2, just applying some pressure to this knight on e5. And if he takes my knight on f3, I take back, knight is still dead. If he takes the bishop on d3, I takes back, knight is still dead. And keep in mind, we are ahead in material and we're about to win even more material. So we definitely want to trade more pieces off the board. So he took, let's take back. That's still a dead knight. And even if he takes here, I should still be able to take back because the knight just has nowhere to go. In fact, I'm not even paying attention to that knight. The knight is on the edge of the board. What I'm trying to do here is checkmate his king. And he played f6 because my bishop was really pointing towards there, but he saw what's coming. Now let's take the knight. I need to complete my development though. This knight is not doing anything. So I need to play knight to d2 or knight to c3. But this is completely winning, so I could do anything to win this game. Queen to g6. Okay. Not sure what that does. It's not a terrible move, but we're just going to be developing our pieces. It did not really create a threat. So let's just get more pieces in the game. Now, all our pieces are developed. The king is not necessarily castled, but the king is safe. His queen is on the same line as my bishop. Pay attention to this. What I'm about to do is called a discovered attack. Moving my pawn out the way, revealing the attack on the queen, which he completely missed. Now we take the queen and we're just completely winning the game. So he decided to take back. And from here, it's just conversion. There's knight e4 here, bringing more pieces in the attack. I want to play queen to g3, targeting this weak pawn as well. Like, yeah, this is just winning. So he uses the rook to guard the pawn. Now I'm going to play queen to g3, applying more pressure to the pawn, attacking this unprotected pawn. And I'm actually thinking of sacrificing my knight on f6. But because he plays bishop to f5, I will not be able to sacrifice because he guards the pawn. So let's just take on d6 here. I'm attacking this pawn. I'm also threatening to just take the bishop. We're trying to trade pieces off the board because we're just completely winning. And then he gave up his rook. So he's just not seeing what is happening here. He got his rook in the game, but we're ahead by so many material. We just want well, the opponent resigns. Now we're going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 800 level. Stick around. I'm only going to be using the Italian game. Hit the pawn, Italian game. H6 is a mistake. Knight f okay, d6 is also a mistake. D6 just blocks out this bishop. I'm just going to continue with my development though. Now I have three of my pieces developed. He developed his knight, and believe it or not, my fellow viewers, this is already losing for black because of this d6 move. I'm now able to play knight to g5. I'm now attacking the f7 pawn twice. How is he going to defend the f7 pawn? I mean, there's no d5. Best he could do is bishop e6, but I already have two pieces covering the e6 square. So I'm going to do something nice. I'm actually going to play bishop takes e6. And usually it's good to take with the knight, but after knight takes e6, I'm attacking his queen. But here's where a brilliant move is going to come in. Once he moves his queen, I'm not going to move away my knight. I'm actually going to play the move knight to d5. Now, I'm threatening to fork on c7. If he takes my knight, that's a royal fork. And if he does nothing, I'm going to fork. And if he takes my knight, I take, hit the knight, and I have a very strong knight on e6. And most importantly, I'm ahead by a pawn. So now he has to move the knight. He moves the knight to d4, makes some sense. Now I'm going to take on d4, and that d4 pawn is a dead pawn. First, we have to ensure that we castle our king. Again, I'm already ahead by a pawn here. He castled his king on the queen side. I castled my king on the king side. What does that mean? It's going to be a crazy game, and I'm going to start my attack. Now, usually I take the slow route, b3, bishop b2, try to win the pawn like this, but I'm just going to play pawn to c3. I want him to take so that way, once I take with the b pawn, my rook gets the open b file. So he did take. Now I take. My bishop is able to join the game. My rook is going to go over. This will be an attack. So he plays pawn to g6. He's trying to develop his last piece. Makes a lot of sense. Now I'm going to play rook to b1, just getting my rook on an open file. And one thing I want you guys to keep in mind when it comes to attacking the opponent's king, you want to be looking for pawns around the opponent's king. With that being said, these are all my targets. So I'm going to keep attacking his b7 pawn with moves like queen to b3. Now I have two pieces targeting b7. This is called a battery, by the way, once we have two pieces on the same line doing the same work. Now he plays b6. This is what we want. We want to see him moving pawns on the side that his king is on. Let me tell you guys exactly how this game is going to go. I'm going to push the a pawn up to a5 because we're trying to open more lines. I'm going to take. It's going to open the a file for one of my rooks. Now I'm going to be able to swing my queen and my rook on the a file, and that's going to be a mate. Or I'm going to take the pawn, develop my bishop to e3, sack the bishop, and then that's going to be a mate. Let's play a4. He plays a6. He decides to play a6. That's actually making my job easier because all I need to do now is to set up the sacrifice. I mean, I'm thinking of a5. Maybe he's going to play b5. So let's play pawn to d3 here, developing our last piece. And then I'm just going to sack, takes, check, king here, mate. If king here, I go check. Maybe he has queen block, so probably need some tweaking. But let's see. So he moves his king to b7. I think he sees the sack coming and he's already defending against it. But let's continue with the plan. Let's go bishop to e3. I'm still threatening to take on b6. And after takes, check, if king back, that's going to be a mate. And if the king goes here, I should be able to check. Queen has to block, check, queen has to block. Then taking on b7 is going to be a mate. This is the moment of truth. He has to be careful. And then he plays c5. So that definitely did not help because now I'm actually going to achieve the same thing that I told you guys about, but I'm just not going to sack my bishop because the whole idea was to get my queen to b6. So it's check. If the king goes here, ensure that you're visualizing queen to b8 is a checkmate. If check, if the king goes to a8, we take on a6 with check. The king is not able to go to b8 because of this rook. So he has to come over, block the check. At that point, my queen goes to c6 with check. His king is not able to come over because of my rook. The king is not able to move up because his queen is on a7. So the queen has to block. Then I grab the queen, and that's going to be a checkmate. So let's start with queen takes b6, check. If the king goes here, easy mate in one. But now that the king goes here, we take on a6 first with check. The queen has to block. Now I go back to c6 because his queen doesn't guard the c6 square anymore. His king is not able to move due to my rook. Queen has to block, and that's a checkmate. We're going to be playing more Italian game at the 900 level. Stick around. Opponent is in the 900 region. We're going to be playing more Italian game. Hit the pawn. He's going to guard it, and we're playing Italian game. Let's see what we're going to be facing. Knight f6 or bishop c5. H6. That's not one of the moves. In the, like whenever you see someone plays this H6 move, they're trying to prevent some knight G5. Just hit them in the center. Hit them so quickly with D4 and tell them that H6 is wasting time. So even if he takes on D4, I could also get away with pawn to C3, offering him a pawn. So he took on D4. I'm not going to play pawn to C3, offering him a pawn. And that was because he plays this weird H6 move. In fact, even if he takes on C3, I could just castle my king. And then when he takes on B2, I take back on B2. And then the Italian game is now transposed into like the most aggressive Danish gambit. H6 is not one of the moves. So he plays knight to f6. Knight to f6 attacks the pawn on e5. If I play e5, there is a lot of possibility of him playing d5. I'm thinking of castling, knight takes e4, and then rook to e1, pinning the knight. But then there's d5 that usually happens in these types of position. So I'm assuming for this case, we're going to play e5. Now, if they play d5, we should not take the knight because then after takes, black is doing fine. If they play d5, we're just going to play bishop to b5, pinning the knight. And then once they move this knight, we take back the pawn on d4 and we're doing fine. If he plays any other move though, then he's just going to be in trouble. Like knight g4, I'm just going to take the pawn. His knight is going to be offside. Knight h5, that traps the knight. Queen to e7 was played. Not too bad, he's trying to be creative. I'm no longer able to take the knight because of the spin. But once I get out of the pin by castling my king, now I'm threatening to take the knight. He's also not able to take this pawn because his king is in the center of the board. So after takes, queen takes, rook to e1, he's going to pin the queen, which is what he went for. So now I'm just going to take the knight. The moment he takes with the queen, rook to e1, pins the queen. Now he will be able to play knight to e4 just to put the knight in front of the queen, but I just need to play f3 and then just take the knight, and I'll already ahead in material. So maybe he's not gonna take. Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to take. So he puts the queen back to d8, but this is just bad, man. This is just bad because first of all, I'm calculating bishop f7 check, king e7, knight g6, king takes check. But the other line that I'm looking on is just knight takes f7 because my bishop covers the f7 square. My knight hits the queen, my knight hits the rook. This is called a fork. His queen is now forced. Well, he resigns. We're going to be playing more Italian game against 1,000 rated players. Stick around. Our opponent is in the 1,000 region. Let's hit him with e4. And then after e5, we develop the knight, hit the pawn. He guards the pawn. We're going to be playing the good old Italian game. And then he goes bishop to c5. What have I been saying? If they play the two knights, play d3. If they put the bishop on c5, play c3. Very, very aggressive. This guy's not going to last 20 moves because now I'm going to hit him with d4, regardless of the next move that he plays. The normal move is knight to f6. It's attacking the pawn we're still going to be hitting him with d4. And after takes, we have this massive control over the center of the board. If he pulls the bishop back and does not take, that's actually a quicker way to lose. So he took, let's take back. He has to find bishop to b4 check. Pulling the bishop back is losing. And I've already won a game like this in the series. Again, we do not play e5 to attack the knight. We play d5 to attack this knight. If the knight goes on the edge of the board, it attacks our bishop. We pull the bishop back, trap his knight, we win the game. If the knight goes back to e7, we play e5, chase his knight around the board. It's already GG's. But then he chose to play knight to b4. That's definitely new. I'm still able to hit him with e5 though. Yeah, let's hit him with e5. Let's force the opponent to break opening principles. That's what we're doing. Now he's forced to move this knight. The question is he going to play knight e4 or knight g4? If he plays one of these moves, we're just going to castle our king because our f pawn is going to be under attack. And please do not get carried away. Don't be pushing the pawns up the board and forget about your own king safety. Both of his knights are unprotected, by the way. I'm just putting that out there. Let me get my king out the center of the board. And because both of his knights are unprotected, I'm okay, never mind. I was thinking of queen to e1 to attack both of the knights at the same time. Can I still do it though? I'm still gonna do it. Queen e1 hits two unprotected knights at the same time. And then he's gonna think he's cooking and then play knight c2 to fork. But then I'm gonna take on e4. And once he takes the rook, he's gonna take a rook that has not yet moved. He already moved his knight 1, 2, 3, 4. And once he takes the rook, I'm going to hit him with knight to g5, threatening a checkmate. And if he plays g6, I play queen h4. And that's actually going to be a checkmating attack. So this is not me acting like I've seen the checkmate. I'm not predicting any checkmate. All I'm saying is if he forks and I take the knight, I have too many pieces pointing towards this guy's king to not win the game. That's all I'm saying. So he went for the fork. My fellow viewers, let's take on e4, hit the knight. So he has to take his rook, and we are officially down by 2 points. But who is more aggressive here? Who is attacking? I like the idea of knight g5. I also like the idea of bishop g5 because it immediately hits the queen. But let's go with knight to g5 here. We're immediately threatening a checkmate. Pawn to f5, I'm not afraid of because there's M passant. And if he plays g6, we hit him with queen to h4, threaten the mate here. He's going to be forced to play h5. And I'm going to play, oh no, that doesn't work. I wanted to play knight e4 to f6, but his queen, my queen is actually pinned. So how am I going to do this? So he did play g6. I want to go queen to h4. I don't want to not have enough pieces in the attack. Like that's what I'm afraid of. If he plays h5, I'm thinking of playing g4 as well. Okay, change our plans. Change our plans. Yo, this is weird. All of a sudden, I'm thinking of queen h4, h5, queen back to f4, but I'm also thinking of immediate queen to f4 with the idea of knight e4 to f6. If queen f4, there is d6, and maybe I'm able to play e6, but then he takes, and then I go here and threaten the mate. Yeah, let's go with that idea. So queen to f4, we're not threatening anything just yet, and we're still down by 2 points. But who is more active? Whose king is more weak? Who has the attack? So he moves his queen to e7, my fellow viewers, and I think I've seen something. First of all, knight to e4 followed by knight to f6 is nice, but I'm thinking, am I able to play d6? And then if he takes, I sack the knight. And if the king takes, I check. And if the king goes here, I take on g6 with check. And if he moves the king, I check again. And if he puts the king back, I go bishop g5, hits the queen. And if the queen moves, I go bishop f6, and that's a force mate. Can I do that? I think we should be able to do that. Let's go pawn to d6. We have to play pawn to d6 first because we want to open this diagonal for the bishop. So now when we sacrifice our knight on h7, we're threatening to play knight to f6, by the way. So it's not like, oh, it's some hope chess type of business. If his king takes, my queen goes to h6 with check. And if his king goes back, this pawn on f7 is going to be pinned. So he decided not to take, but he also decided to lose the game even quicker. I really wanted you guys to see what was about to happen. Hopefully, your visualization skill is decent. But after knight to f6 check, king to f8, that's just going to be a checkmate. And if he moves his king to g7, that's also going to be a checkmate, which means if I play knight to f6 check, he is forced to sacrifice his queen. And then once I take queen h6, followed by queen to g7, is just going to be a checkmate. So he moves the king to g7, but that's just a checkmate. We're not going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 1100 level. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 1100 region. We're going to be playing more Italian game. Let's attack the pawn. The knight guards the pawn. We're now in the Italian game. And as we discussed, it's either knight. Okay, knight to d4 is actually a trick. And it's very important that you guys know this trick. It's very important that you guys know this trick. So I think I'm going to show this trick to you guys. Now, whenever you see them play knight d4, what the correct move is just to play pawn c3. They take your knight, your queen takes, you threaten mate, you have a lead in development. Now, I want to show you guys what could happen if you're a greedy person. This is a very dangerous trap. Please do not do what I'm about to do. The person who is watching this thinks this is a free pawn and they take a free pawn. Oh, this guy, he's moving the same pieces more than once. He blundered his pawn. I'm going to take on f7 next. Like, what is this guy doing? Now he plays queen to g5, hitting the queen, hitting the pawn on g2. But you don't see that you're about to get checkmated in like maybe the next five moves. So you continue to be greedy. You're like, wait, isn't this just a fork? Can't I just take on f7, hitting the rook, hitting the queen? That's just a fork. Let's take on f7. I'm completely winning now. And then you notice that I can't take his rook because my rook is under attack. And if I take his rook, he's gonna take my rook, and then I have to pull my bishop back. And then you start to panic. And then you're like, okay, let's just move the rook to f1. Let's just move the rook to f1. But this is mate in two. Queen takes e4. If I block with the queen, obviously, he's gonna take my queen and I'm gonna lose the game. But if I'm like, okay, that's not bad. Let me just block with the bishop. Then knight f3 is a beautiful smothered mate. Don't play like this, but we're gonna be playing more Italian game against 1200 rated players. So ensure that you stick around. Our opponent is now in the 1200 region. Same treatment. Let's hit this one with e4. Now, after e5, we're going to play knight f3. He guards the pawn, and we're in the Italian game. Now, this is the two knights defense, and I'm assuming this guy watches my videos, so we're not going to be trying any fried liver attack. Let's play pawn to d3. I think I've done too many videos explaining how to beat the fried liver, so everybody knows how to beat it now. Bishop c5 is correct. Now, I'm going to castle my king. Let's just get the king out of the center of the board here. So he plays knight to g4. That's a bad move. For one, you do not want to be moving the same piece more than once in the opening stage of the game. Maybe he wants me to play h3 so that way he could play. Okay, let's play h3. Maybe he thinks a fishing pole trap. Okay, this is what happens when you play chess for traps, because the fishing pole traps, it doesn't even work here, because if I take and he takes, if I put my knight back to h2, then the fishing pole trap works. But if I takes and he takes, because my bishop covers the g5 square, I'm actually able to play knight to g5. And if your queen is not able to immediately go to the h file to support your rook to attack the opponent's king, then there will not be any fishing pole trap. And it basically means you donated a piece. So he plays d6. Yeah, now he's really trying. I think he wants me to fork so that way he plays queen to h4. And then if I take his rook, he plays pawn to g3. And that's actually going to be a checkmate. So we're not going to be doing that. But we're going to be taking with the bishop. That's a check. Now his king is forced to move. I am ahead by an entire piece. Yes, he has a rook on this file that my king is on. But if his queen is not able to join the attack, he has nothing. Okay, so he moves his king to f8. Now, here's one thing that I'm noticing. His king is on the same line as my rook. Okay, never mind, never mind. I wanted to play bishop to e3, takes, but then his queen is just going to take my knight. So let's just develop. Yeah. Yeah, let's just develop. Let's just develop the rest of our pieces. It's very important that I do not allow his queen to get to h4. If his queen gets to h4, it's over. For the person who is about to leave a comment saying, I missed a fork, I have nothing to say to you. So he pulls the knight back to e7. That means it's going to be harder for his queen to get to h4. It also means I'm able to develop my bishop to e3 because the queen no longer attacks the knight. So I am able to develop my bishop. What I wanted to say was my rook is on the same line as his king. So if he takes my bishop and I take back, it's going to allow my rook to get a discovered attack on his king, and that could be super deadly. So let's see how he reacts to this. He plays c6. He did not go for that. I mean, we have to open the position. We're ahead by a piece, so all trades are good here. But I really like the idea of playing pawn to d4 because his king is not the safest, and we want to ensure that we open the position as best as we possibly can. He took, let's just take back. My knight is unprotected. I need to be aware of that. So maybe he's gonna move his knight, try to take my knight, try to get his queen on the h file. That could be deadly. But let's see how he plays. Queen to b6. That's interesting. I have an idea. Here's what I want to do. I want to play knight a5, force his queen to move, take his bishop, and then find some magical way to get my queen to d8, because that would be a checkmate. Let's go for the fork. I mean, the goal is to trade anyways. We're ahead by so much points. It's best for him to move the queen. Not sure where he's going to move the queen though. If he puts the queen on b5, then that's actually what I want because it's going to be easier for me to get my queen to d8, and that's going to be leading to a checkmate. Okay, he pulls back to c7 instead. But I have something even more beautiful. Look at this. So we're going to take, we're definitely going to take. But then his pawn is going to take. Now, while his pawn takes, his queen and his rook is actually threatening a checkmate. But I'm actually going to play the move bishop to e5, preventing the mate. And it's actually removing the guard tactic because his queen covers the d8 square. So if the queen decides to take my piece, then queen to d8 is going to be a checkmate. So let's take here. He's going to take, thinking that he's going to be checkmating me when the whole time he's the one getting checkmated. So he took. Let's now play bishop to e5, attack the queen. Now, let's just say the queen is not able to take. It's not necessarily mean the queen has to take and it's a force mate. He just needs to play queen to b6 or queen to a5 in this position and he's safe. But he's down by a piece, so it's still completely winning for me. Okay, or he could put the queen on d7, trying to trade the queens off the board. I'm ahead by 3 points, by the way, which means a queen trade is good for me in this position. But I'm also on the attacking side. And whenever you're on the attacking side, it's not usually advised for you to be trading the pieces off the board. So there's two moves that I'm thinking of here. I'm thinking of queen c1 with the whole idea of playing queen f4, putting my queen on the same line as his king. And I'm also thinking of bishop to d6, just pinning his knight with some bishop to e6 idea followed by queen takes g4. That's also nice. Like both of these ideas are really nice. I'm not sure which one to play for. All right, we're going to be going with the queen c1 idea because I'm actually not seeing how he's going to be preventing some nasty discovered attacks once my queen gets to f4. He's also not able to play rook h5 and attack my knight. Like he has nothing. And I could still play a move like bishop to e6, which attacks the queen. And then once his queen moves, hit him with queen to f4 check, which will lead to a checkmate. Okay, he pulls the knight back to g8. I don't think I was expecting that, but I think he's surviving for a few more moves. I'm going to continue with my plan. Queen to f4. My queen is on the same line as his king. I'm also threatening to play moves like bishop to e6, which would win his queen, or bishop to d6, which would check his king. I want you guys to notice how I'm completely surrounding his king here with most of my pieces. Whenever you're trying to attack someone's king, you don't want to just do what he did, where he sat the knight and then hoping for a fishing pole trap, and then it didn't work. You want to slowly ensure that you got all your pieces in the game, and that's how your attacks are going to be successful. So knight to f6 was played. I was expecting knight to f6. I could takes, and then win his rook on the next move. But bishop to d6 is just winning a queen. Because once I check, his queen is forced to block, grab the queen, king has to take, maybe check him on e5, king goes back. I'm not seeing the mate though, that's the thing. But a queen is a queen at the end of the day. So let's win the queen. So he now has to block with the queen or take my bishop. If he takes my bishop, then that's just mate. So he has to block with his queen. And then once he blocks with his queen, I'm actually not going to take his queen. When you see a good move, look for a better one. Well, he resigns. Now we're going to be doing the same thing against someone at the 1300 level. Stick around. Opponent is now 1300. We're still going to be playing some Italian game. E5, knight f3, hit the pawn, knight c6 guards the pawn, and we are in the Italian game. Bishop c5, knight f6. These are the two main moves. What will he play? He plays bishop c5. Let's go c3 here. The plan is to play d4. Hit the bishop. Knight f6 is the main move. Now we play d4, attacking the bishop. And once the pawn takes, I'll just take on d4. And now I have two very, very strong pawns. Now bishop to b4 is the main move. But I'm just going to block with the knight. Knight takes e4 is now the main move, which my opponent definitely knows what he's doing. But once they play knight takes e4, now I'm just going to castle the king. The main move after, okay, he castled. Okay, this move I'm actually not accustomed to. If I take the knight, there's d5, bishop back takes, and okay, that's just a regular position. I could also play d5 and just hit his knight. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Let's play d5. Attack his knight, force his knight to move away. Now all his pieces are unprotected. He took on c3, by the way. Now I'm thinking of taking on c3. His bishop is able to take, hit my rook, but we're definitely going to be developing an attack. So let's take on c3. After and by the way, the whole idea of playing this line is so that way we're able to gain tempo from with our pieces. So we're going to be sacrificing a pawn or two. And if I'm not wrong, there could be a Greek gift sacrifice coming here because he's attacking my bishop. Obviously, I'm not going to allow the knight to take my bishop. But after bishop to d3, if he takes this pawn, we could sacrifice the bishop on h7. And if king takes, we play knight to g5 check. And if king back to g8, queen to h5, and he will be getting checkmated. So let's pull the bishop back to d3. It's getting serious now because his bishop here is under attack. I think he needs to pull his bishop back to e7 to not allow the Greek gift sacrifice. So he did pull the bishop back to e7. The Greek gift sacrifice will not work because his bishop covers e7. I'm thinking of playing c4 here. And I'm also thinking of just playing queen c2, applying some. Let's play queen. Hmm. Okay, first I'm gonna play queen c2, apply pressure on h7, just forcing him to push one of these pawns around his king. So now that he pushed the h pawn, now I'm gonna play c4. His knight, it will take his knight a while to rejoin the game, by the way. And while he's trying to rejoin the game, I'm gonna use the time to start some attack on his king. For example, I have a plan of just okay, bishop d2, queen c1, bishop takes h6. That's one plan. Now, I don't want him to be able to play bishop to g4. That's an annoying move. So let's just play h3 first. Like, not because we're down by a pawn means we need to rush and we need to immediately see the checkmate right now. We just want to ensure that we keep the opponent's pieces inactive. Now, I'm bracing for bishop f6 attacking my rook. Once this happens, I'll just play rook b1, putting my rook on the file, and if all the pieces are active, me being down by one pawn is not going to be a huge deal. So he plays c6. Let's develop the bishop, bishop to f4. If he takes, I'm just going to take back. Nothing huge happens. I think he's just trying to get his knight back in the game. Obviously, if I takes, his knight rejoins the game. We don't want his knight to rejoin the game. So now once I take, his knight is still not able to go to c6. I want to play queen to d2 sack on h6, and that's going to be leading to a checkmate if he's not careful. He plays bishop to d7. He wants to put his rook on the c file and attack my queen. So I'm just going to play rook to b1. I just want to ensure that I get all my pieces in the game. I want to ensure that I'm playing as principled as I possibly can. He plays queen c8. Now I'm going to play queen to d2, attacking the knight, threatening some sacrificial ideas on h6. Knight c4 is definitely a move. If knight c4, I may play queen to c1. So he plays b6 to protect the knight, and we're definitely sacrificing on h6. Now, I've spoke about this sacrifice so much. If you have a queen and a bishop working together, pointing towards h6, just sacrifice, especially if you have a bishop on d3. Now, let's take on h6. Bishop to f5 is definitely a defense, though. I did not say this is going to be easy. And that's another thing that I want you guys to keep in mind. Like, this sacrifice doesn't guarantee a checkmate, but it's just the hardest thing to defend against. So, for example, if I takes, I'm helping his queen to join the defense. So I'm actually going to play the move rook to d8. And what I'm doing is I'm basically trying to set up a rook lift where if he takes, now I take, and I have a lot of ideas of swinging my rook over to g3, and this could lead to a checkmate. Now, queen f5, I think he should still go for queen f5 in this position. He plays queen to c2, though. That's something. Forking both of my rooks. Okay, it's not too bad. But let's just play rook to d1, keeping both of the rooks guarded. Like, once I move my knight out the way, then rook to g3 is going to really hit him. I really do not think his queen belongs on c2. He should have played queen to f5. Once I play knight d4, hit the queen, rook to g3 is a checkmate. And then he's grabbing even more pawns. I think he don't see how dangerous the position is. And I think I want to put the knight on g5 actually, because I'm still threatening a mate. If the bishop takes, now I take with check. And then once his king move, I check him again. And then rook g3 is gonna be a mate. So this is a more forcing way to deliver the checkmate. So let's play knight to g5. We're now threatening a checkmate on h7 that he has to defend against, which is not possible. So the bishop has to take, or he has to resign, or something. So he took with the bishop, and this is going to be a checkmate. First, we're going to take his bishop. Once he moves the king, we're going to check on h6. The king has to go to g8, and rook to g3 will be a checkmate. So let's check here. The king has to move. Well, he resigns. We're playing more Italian game against someone at 400. Stick around. Opponent is now in the 1400 region. Let's play e4. E5, knight f3 hit the pawn, bishop c4. We're going to be playing against an Italian game. Against knight f6, we're going to be playing pawn to d3. And bishop c5 was played. Now, we're climbing a bit in the ELO. This is 1400, so I'm actually going to play pawn to c3. This is how the big boys play the Italian game. They don't put a pawn, a knight on c3. Now, d5 is not a terrible move. It's one of the moves I don't like to play against, but I know that it's not the most principled because you don't want to be breaking if your king is still in the center of the board. So let's just take on d5. And then once the knight take on d5, I castle my king. Just needs to castle in this position. That looks like the more sensible move to make. So he castles the king. After he castles, now I'll play rook to e1, applying some pressure to his pawn on e5. I'm currently attacking it twice. He's only guarding it once, so I'm expecting him to add some additional defenders. Rook to e8 is the easiest way to guard this pawn. There's also f6, which allows this knight to be a pin piece. Now, he plays rook to e8, and I knew that I told you guys this was the way to guard the pawn, but turns out it looks like an inaccurate move. Because let's think. What if I play d4 here? If I play d4 and he takes, the queen is the only defender of his knight. So I'm going to grab the rook. The queen is going to take. We're going to take the knight and we're going to win the game. Now, what if I play d4 and he pulls the bishop back? Then I'm going to grab the pawn, and I'm already ahead by a pawn. Plus, I'm going to be attacking his knight on d5 twice. So pawn to d4. Looks like I'm winning a pawn. Let's see. Unless he has some miraculous stuff that I didn't see, I'm just going to take his pawn and threaten his knight. So I guess this is why the immediate d5 does okay. And obviously, it looks like he found something. Knight back to b6. It's a crazy move. Okay, the thing is, here's what's happening. Here's what's happening. If I take his bishop, he takes my bishop. If I move my bishop, he takes the pawn. He's attacking my pawn one, two, three, four times. I'm guarding the pawn one, two, three times. So I need to be careful. Now, one other move I'm thinking of here is bishop g5. I mean, it develops the bishop, it gains a tempo on the queen. f6 is not a possible move. So I am leaning towards that for now. So let's just develop our bishop to g5, hit the queen, and then we try to solve whichever problem that's coming our way after. Queen to d7 is the move that I think, okay, bishop back to e7. That makes a lot of sense as well. But the thing is, now he only has three attackers on my pawn. He is also attacking my bishop though, so we definitely have to get rid of this bishop. My knight is going to be under attack. Looks like I'm not winning a pawn, but let's just move the bishop to, let's say here, apply some pressure to his knight, one of the main defender of his e5 pawn. Best he should do here is to take on d4. If he takes on d4, however, I am going to be giving up my bishop for a knight. So that way, once he takes, I take, and I'm applying some pressure to d4. Okay, he decided to play e5. I'm not buying that move actually. Like, I don't necessarily have to move my knight. I was planning on giving up my bishop for a knight here in the first place to double up his pawns. Now, once I give up my bishop for a knight, his knight no longer guards the e5 square. So the moment he takes my bishop, my knight gets the e5 square. Okay, he didn't take the bishop, which means I'm not just going to be playing with an extra pawn. So either I takes, then take, or I just take on f3 with the same bishop, and I'm ahead by a pawn. If he trades the rook, my queen gets the file. I'll simply develop my knight to d2, and I'm doing fine. This is just an extra pawn, you know? He needs to finish his development, though. He needs to finish his development. I was about to say he needs to play bishop e6, but there's a drawback to bishop e6. The bishop on c8 was guarding b7. Moving the bishop to e6 no longer guards the b7. So even though my development is not complete, a pawn is a pawn, and I'm hitting the rook. So he moves the rook out the way. The question is, where do I put the bishop? I like e4 for the bishop just because I'm pointing towards this king. If knight c4, I'm going to play b3, hit the knight. Knight d2 is coming. I need to finish my development, but I'm ahead by 2 pawns. So I'm I'm not going to be in any trouble at all. Smooth Italian game. Knight c4 was played. My b2 pawn is under attack twice. But as I said before, if knight c4, we play b3, hit the knight. I'm expecting knight to d6 to hit my bishop. I'm just going to play bishop c2 here. No, we're not going to play bishop c2. We're ahead by 2 pawns. Let's play knight to d2, just guarding the bishop, seeing that I'm ahead by 2 pawns. And if he takes and my knight takes, my knight would have gotten the c5 square. He didn't, though. He played f5. And I'm now forced to move my bishop. Let's just pull it back to c2, where it is safe. He is weakening his e5 square. Now I want to play knight f3 followed by knight e5. And then that's going to be a very nice outpost for my knight. There is also c4 followed by d5. Knight to b5 definitely makes some sense. He's attacking my c3 pawn. It's funny though, because I was planning on playing queen to f3 to guard the pawn. There's no other aggressive ways to guard the pawn except queen to f3. So let's just guard the pawn. If c4, then I lose this pawn. Bishop to d5 hits the queen, but then he leaves his f5 pawn unprotected. So that's nice. My plan from here is to play moves like rook e5, rook e1, doubling up on the e file. Maybe I want to move my queen out the way so my knight gets the f3 square. I also need to chase this knight out. Like it's not on my half of the board, but it's perplexing my half of the board. I'm not comfortable with that. Okay, queen d7, that's a sign that he wants to play bishop to c4. If I hit the knight goes back. I don't gain anything. My b3 pawn is weak. c4, I'm going to lose this pawn. So let's play rook to e5. There's no bishop to d5. My a rook is the only piece that is not doing anything. I want to play rook to e1 and swing my rook in the game. Remember, when you're playing chess, it's very important that every single piece is doing a role. You should be able to call one of your pieces and say, hey, what are you doing? Bishop, controlling this diagonal, applying pressure to this pawn. Rook on an outpost, hitting this pawn, hitting this knight. Queen, hitting this pawn. Okay, now he plays bishop to d5. That gone mad. This is GG's. This is GG's. Okay, let's calculate. If I take the rook, he takes my queen. I take another rook with check. He moves the king. I give back both of the rooks. Check, queen takes, check, king takes, knight takes f3, and I'm ahead by a piece. I'm just winning then. What if I take the rook and he plays rook takes? Then I take it the queen. And if queen takes, I take with check. I could also take on f5, but taking on e7 is just free material. So let's just take. And this is GG's. Maybe he think I had to move my queen. Or maybe what he saw was if he takes, I'm not able to take because I'm going to lose my rook. But his other rook is hanging. His king is going to be forced to go here. I'm going to check him, give back the two rooks. Once the queen takes, my knight takes his bishop. I'm going to have a knight and a bishop versus his knight. Maybe he's going to take on c3, but I'll be ahead by a knight. So he decided to play rook takes first. Doesn't change much. This is actually better. This is a better situation for me, which is why he resigned. We're going to be doing the same thing against players at the 1500 level. Stick around. The opponent is now 1500. More Italian game coming your way. Let's play e4. We play e5. We develop the knight, hit the pawn. Knight comes to c6, and we have the Italian game. Are we going to be seeing knight? Oh, he plays h6. H6 is, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but it's definitely unnecessary. Knight f6 or bishop c5 is better. Whenever you see someone play a6 or d6 or any move that does not immediately try to control the center, you should immediately launch your pawn in the center of the board because h6 is wasting time and the Italian game is all about gaining time, gaining tempo so that way you can get your attack. And then he plays queen to f6, definitely developing the queen too early. Now, if I take his knight takes, I take his queen takes. I could also play knight c3 with the idea of playing knight d5. If knight c3 takes, knight d5 hits the queen. Let's play knight c3 first. We're just developing our pieces. So now he plays an unnecessary pawn move and he brought his queen out too early. He's just asking for trouble here. Okay, so he plays bishop to b4. Not bad. He's pinning my knight to my king, so I'm now not able to play the knight d5 move that I wanted to play. But let's just get our king out the center of the board. Like, even though I developed my knight with the intention of playing knight d5, I was also developing my pieces. So I'm one move away from completing my development, and this guy's breaking all the rules in the book. Unnecessary pawn move, moving the queen out too early, moving the same piece more than once, giving up a bishop for a knight. Yeah, this is crazy. It's the funny thing though, I do not have a huge advantage, but I know something will happen. And then he plays a6, another unnecessary pawn move. Now, what my goal is here is just to open the position as best as I can so that way I could start my attack. So I'm going to start by playing the move pawn takes e5. I'm just trying to open as many lines. I could lose a pawn here, but I have such a lead in development where losing a pawn won't affect me, even though I'm not actually losing a pawn. I'm just saying. So he took with the knight. There's no queen move that works because he's just going to take here with check. So let's take on e5. Now his queen is forced to take. And once the queen takes, it means that he is attacking c3 and e4 at the same time. Now, my goal is to develop as quickly as I can. So we're going to hit him with the move queen to f3 here. Not because I wanted to guard my pawns, but I actually want to develop my bishop to f4. And I want to develop my bishop with tempo. So I get the queen on f2, attacking his f7 pawn two times. So that way, once he guards the f7 pawn with a move like knight to f6, now I'm able to simply develop my bishop. Now, we're going to play the move bishop to c5. It's a development move. We gain a tempo. Queen to c5 would be a very good move here because it basically regains the tempo. Like, he has to put his queen somewhere where he attacks something. Otherwise, pawn to e5 is just going to win the game. So he did play queen to c5. Now, here's the thing. For one, I'm not down by any pawns, but I need to ensure that I do not lose the tempo. So I attacked his queen. He moves the queen, attack my bishop. I don't want to protect the bishop or move the bishop because then that would mean I lose the tempo. So what am I going to do? Am I going to move the bishop? No. I'm going to be applying the fact that offense is the best defense using danger levels. He's attacking my 3 points. I'm just going to play pawn to e5, counter attacking his 3 points. Now, he could take my bishop, I take his knight, he takes my pawn, but the guy's king is in the center of the board. That's what happens when you make unnecessary pawn moves, take your queen out too early, move the same piece more than once, give your opponent the bishop here, and fail to develop your pieces. He took the bishop. Now we take his knight, and rook to e8 is coming. I think the best he should do here is castle. But then even if he castles, he's in trouble because I can always take and then take this pawn or hit him with queen to g3. This is GG's. Okay, he took the pawn. So I'm down by a pawn here. But rook to e1. Look on all my pieces. What's the difference between my pieces and his pieces? I mean, his queen is not the worst, I'm not going to act like his queen is just the most terrible piece. But what is the other pieces doing? The only piece that he has is the queen. I have all my pieces developed. I think I already found the winning move. Is it bishop e5 or bishop g5? Oh, okay, here's what I'm seeing. Queen takes f6 is a checkmate. That's it. GG's. But my bishop is in the way. So I'm trying to find the most creative way to get my bishop out of the way, which is why I thought of bishop to g5, which is just, that's such a brilliant move. Because when I hit him with bishop g5, I'm immediately threatening a checkmate and forking. So even if he defends with the queen, I'm going to take on f6 and it's going to be a checkmate. So he has to just move one of the pawns, create a running square for the king. I'm going to take on f6 and I'm going to win his rook. So let's go bishop to g5. We spoke about this. King in the center, moves on the opponent's half of the board, double pawns, wasting time. Like, don't be like this guy. I think he broke majority of the opening principles of this game. He got his queen out early. He played two unnecessary pawn moves. He moves the bishop more than once. He gave me the bishop here. He kept his king in the center of the board. What else can he do that breaks principles? So he did play c6. Now the question is, do I take with the queen or do I take with the bishop? If I take with the queen, the king runs. Still trying to find a checkmate. If I check here, he has to run to b6. And then I check here, he runs to a7. Then I check here, he plays c5. Then I take the rook. Does that make any sense? Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So let's check on f6 first. Am I actually just sending his king to safety? So what I saw was we check here. King has to go here. If d6, there's queen takes. Now, once the king goes here, if I take his rook, he takes my bishop. So we check here, forcing the king to go here. And then the bishop comes in the game with check. He has to, oh my lord. If c5, there's queen b6 check, king b8. Oh, but he went here. He went here. Okay. Again, if I take his rook, he takes my bishop. I check here. What would he play after I check? Once he plays king to a4, rook to b4 is just winning the queen. It's over. I was actually thinking of bishop to c7, and then after b6, I take, and if he goes here, I also win the queen. So this is just completely winning. How to do it? Check, king up, grab the queen, takes, king takes, and then swing over the other rook and checkmate him. So we're actually not going to take the rook. What have we learned in chess? Whenever you see a good move, look for a better one. You see, the guy's rook is hanging the whole entire game. We're not even taking the rook because checkmate ends the game. Once he puts his king on the same line as the queen, rook to b4 will be a fork. Pawn b6 does not change the issue because once I take on b6, the king still has to come to a4. So the king moves to a4, hit him with rook to b4, has to sack his queen, take the queen. Rook is still under attack, but his king is too exposed. So he's going to be getting checkmated here. What am I saying? Okay, it has to be queen d4. If the king goes to b5, then rook to b1 is a checkmate. If the king goes to a3, then rook to b1 check, king takes b2, queen to b2 is a checkmate. Hopefully you guys saw this. Queen to d4 check. He moves the king to a3. Okay. Yeah. Now we check here or here. What did I see? We check here. The king goes here. And that's mate. Yeah. So we check here. If he takes the pawn, rook a1 is a checkmate. And if the king goes to b4, queen b3 is a checkmate. Moves the king, but that's just a checkmate. We're going to be playing more Italian games against someone at the 1600 level. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1600. We're still going to be playing more Italian game. Let's go e4. E5, hit the pawn, guards the pawn, good old Italian game, and bishop to c5 is played. I'm seeing a lot of bishop c5 at the higher level, and whenever you see this move, here we're just going to play pawn to c3. If knight f6, we go d3. If bishop c5, we go c3. The next move is d4. Like, regardless of what he plays, I could just listen and just play d4. Now, knight f6, we've seen before. If knight f6, we play d4. It's the theoretical move. Yes, he's attacking our e4 pawn, but we're trying to sacrifice a pawn or even two pawn to gain this massive attack on the king. That's how we want to play the Italian game. So he took, let's take on d4, hitting the bishop. Bishop to b4 is the only move that makes sense. Any other bishop move is just losing. He checked with the bishop. That's the correct move. Let's go knight c3. And taking on e4 here is actually a free pawn, which he did. Everything that you guys are watching now, this is the correct theoretical move. White is playing all the right moves in this line. Black is playing all the right moves. Now, even though he's ahead by a pawn and he's attacking c3 twice and I'm only guarding it once, I'm going to ignore what he's doing and I'm going to get my king out the center of the board. Now, the top engine move for black here is to play bishop takes c3. Knight takes c3 is actually losing, and pawn to d5 gives me a free pawn. So let's see if he knows what he's doing. Oh, this is actually one way to do it as well. He castles the king, and he castles the king knowing that if I take the knight, he plays d5, and that's a fork. And if I go back, he takes, I take. But then he's just giving me back the pawn, though. Like, it's boring. It's just giving me back the pawn. I'm even thinking of playing bishop to d3 here, but he's still going to play d5. So if they castle here, definitely just take the knight. It's the best move. Now, d5 is something. After d5, we have to guard our knight. It's like there's no other move that makes a lot more sense. Unless I could go bishop to g5, hit the queen. Yeah, but bishop g5 hits the queen doesn't make much sense either because now when he plays f6, I have so many pieces under attack. So let's just pull the bishop back to d3, guard the knight. And just like that, the position is now equal. Now, this is called an isolated pawn. Isolated pawns could be a weakness or a strength in your position, depending on how you use it. Now, rook to e8 was played. That's a very nice move. He's applying some pressure to my bishop with tempo. Now, I also want to play a very nice move myself. I'm thinking of playing queen c2 because not only do I guard the bishop, I apply some pressure to his h7 pawn, but I'm also attacking his knight two times. So I could be winning a pawn in that situation. Anything else is too passive. Like, why am I going to be pulling back my pieces? Let's go queen to c2. Now, his h7 pawn is under attack. Hmm. I was not expecting knight takes d4. I was not expecting knight takes d4. I mean, it's an interesting move. It's definitely a move. It's definitely a decision, but I wasn't expecting him to play that move. Okay, first of all, we're going to take on h7 with check, forcing the king to move. Then we're going to take the knight, forcing his queen to take. Then it's going to give us time to play bishop e3, developing our bishop and attacking the queen at the same time. If he sack the rook, we takes, check, king over, g6. Then we have to sack the bishop. If I takes, it's the same thing if I take. So let's take here first, actually. Yeah, let's take on d4 first. After queen takes, we take on h7. Now we take on h7. The position is equal, by the way. I'm not ahead by any material here. He moves the king. Like, this is actually an open position. So if you do well in open position, an open position is basically a position where there's not a lot, there's no pawns in the center of the board, and there's no pawns at all in the center of the board. When it comes to open position, you have to be tactically sharp. You have to see things. Bishop e3 has to be the move here. Like, all the moves that I'm playing has to be the best move because I'm just not seeing anything else that makes logical sense. I'm hitting the queen. For some reason, I'm slightly afraid of rook takes e3, but it doesn't work. If he sack, I take stakes, move, g3, I'm also able to take here. So now he plays queen to h4. So he moves his queen to gain tempo on my bishop. Now I'm forced to move my bishop. Now it's either f5 or d3. Let's use the process of elimination. If bishop f5, he takes, I'm threatening this. He also does not have to take. And then he plays rook e5, I take, I get his rook in the game. So with that being said, I'm leaning towards bishop to d3. I'm not seeing any huge threats after bishop to d3. His c7 pawn is unprotected though, so he has to do something about that, which is why he plays bishop to d6. Very nice move. He's guarding the c7 pawn. He's also threatening a checkmate on h2. We have to prevent the mate by attacking the queen. So let's do that. And usually persons play moves like queen to h3 in this position. Not a move that we should be afraid of. Like, we have light square weaknesses in our position, by the way. But the only time we get scared whenever there's light squared weaknesses in the position if we don't have a light squared bishop. Because I have a light squared bishop, I'm going to use my light squared bishop to guard my light squares. With that being said, the move that I'm going to be playing here is bishop to e4. Now, I'm just keeping it on this diagonal so my light squares is good. I want to also play moves like bishop to g2, get his queen off my half of the board. Plus, I'm making it a bit harder for his c8 bishop to be developed. Hmm. He plays rook to e6. Like, I see what he's trying. Like, I see the vision. It's a rook lift. He's trying to put the rook on h6. He's trying to take on h2. But why are you putting your pieces on light squares and there's a light squared bishop in the center of the board? The rook and the queen is on the same line. Why can't I hit him with bishop f5? Now, do not get me wrong. This is going to be a very, very risky idea, but it's material and we're going to be taking the material. And the reason why it's going to be risky, let's play the move. The reason why I said it's going to be risky is because I do not have a light squared bishop anymore. And not only don't I have a light squared bishop, I don't have a light squared bishop, and he has a light squared bishop. So all he needs to do from here is to tack on the light squares. And he could argue that he has some compensation, but I'm not going to be allowing all of that. Like, once my pieces are active enough, then the light square weaknesses that I have should not be too much. Okay, so he's most likely going to put the queen here. That's the only square for the queen. So, yeah, so he puts the queen here. Have to follow through with the plan. Let's take here, assuming he's going to take with the bishop. And there's two ideas that I have to be careful of. Bishop to h3 followed by queen to f3, and there's bishop to d5 followed by queen to f3. All the ideas applies pressure to my light squares, but once I'm able to take care of my light squares, I should be good. Okay, I need to figure out a way to get the queens off the board. If I'm able to get the queens off the board, then I should be safe. So I wanted to get one of my rooks in the game, but I'm actually going to start by playing the move queen to d1. And I'm not expecting him to trade queens. I'm expecting him to play bishop to g4 and attack my queen, or queen to h3, so that way his bishop can come in. But I'm seeing a way in which I could go queen d4 followed by queen h4. And like, once the queens are off the board, I'm just completely winning because I have more material than him. So he did play bishop g4. My queen is under attack. Now I could play f3, hit the bishop, but let's go with queen to d4. I have to be very precise in what I'm doing. Like, bishop e5 is an idea, but all I need to do is keep my queen on the fourth rank. So that way, the moment he moves his bishop, I swing my, okay, for example, like this. Bishop to f3 was played. Queen to h4 takes. My king is not going to be as weak anymore, even though now he's going to want to get his rook all the way around to deliver some checkmating attacks. But getting rid of the queen here is a huge win. So let's just go here. Let's pin his queen, forcing him to trade the queens off the board. We're now in an endgame where I have more material, but he has one last trick up his sleeve. He's going to go rook e8, rook e6, rook g6, and that's actually a checkmate. The good thing is I have enough time to try to prevent something like this. Okay, bishop to e5 was played. He's attacking the weak pawns in the endgame. That's a good sign of endgame technique, but I also know a few endgame techniques myself. That being said, I'm not going to guard the pawn. I'm going to go rook to c1. So if he takes this pawn, he's going to be leaving this pawn unprotected, and my rook is going to be able to get to his seventh rank. Now, because he has the bishop here, if I could just get rid of one of these bishops, that would be good, preferably the light squared bishop, but it's going to be hard to capture his light squared bishop if I don't have a light squared bishop. Now he plays pawn to c6. I'm thinking of rook c5, but then he's just going to take my pawn. I think it should work. Rook c5. If he takes the pawn, I go rook to b8, hit the bishop. If he attacks my rook, I go rook to c3, hit the bishop again. And then once he moves his bishop, I take the pawn. Yes, he's able to take, but I'm going to be able to take on f7. So let's go with that. We have to be aggressive. And I want you guys to keep in mind, when you're in the end game, you don't necessarily want to be trading pawns off the board. So I know that a few, like a pawn or maybe two is coming off the board, but this is just for me to quickly get my rooks in the game. I want you guys to notice how now his rook is not in the game and my rooks are now getting very, very active. So even if he pull his bishop back to f6 trying to take here, well, he went here instead. I agreed to play the move rook to c3, attacking his bishop. And then once his bishop move, I take on b7. Another thing that I could do is also just take on a7, because if his rook take on a7, I take his unprotected bishop on f3. So now I could confirm that I'm in a good shape. So bishop d6 was played. He didn't even try to attack my unprotected pawn. Let's take on b7 here. Now, the bishop is on the same line as my rook, so I have to be careful not to fall for any move like pawn c5. I am attacking this unprotected pawn, so he has to defend. And I'm attacking a7 twice. He's only guarding it once. And if I'm able to take on a7, my a2 pawn becomes a pass pawn. And once I get a pass pawn, you know the drill. We're going to be pushing the pass pawn up the board. So he plays bishop to d5. So not only did he guard his pawn, he's also attacking my pawn. Okay, so do I push? Do I push or do I takes? Takes. Bishop takes. Takes. Nah, that's gonna be hard to win though. That's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah, let's push. I want to keep this pawn. I don't want to trade too many pawns. Now, if he plays a5, I could play rook to a7, because if he plays rook to b8, I take on a7. Oh, but then there's this. Okay, so okay, he plays a6 instead. So now we're gonna be playing rook to a7. And if he goes here, we take on a6. And if okay, he's trading. He's just trading. I only have 40 seconds on the clock, so he's playing a bit fast and I'm sensing it. So I need to be careful here. Like my dream would be to get one of the bishops off the board, but I don't think he's gonna allow me. I need to get my king in the game and I need to ensure that I don't get pinned or skewer. So it's not gonna be an easy game. So he moves the king. Okay, let's go. Let's go here. I need to get my king in the game. I can't believe I only have 30 seconds on the clock. That's crazy. Let's get the king in the game. And I have to ensure that I'm not getting skewered or fork. And I have to, I kind of need to stay off the light squares, but I'm kind of conscious about the fact that I'm on the light squares, if that makes any sense. Okay, let's give a check. He has to move the king. Okay, now I go here. I'm threatening a checkmate, which is weird because I'm not seeing. Oh, I think he has f6. But if f6 I take, I only have 30 seconds on the clock. I think he has to play f6, and then I'm just gonna take. Is he not seeing f6? And then if I takes, maybe bishop g8 to prevent the mate. Like if he's not seeing that, then he's cooked. Well, he resigns. Opponent is now in the 1700 level. Let's play e4 here. And then after e5, we hit the pawn. We're still going to be playing more Italian. He guards it with the knight. Now we play bishop to c4. Now, bishop to c5 was played in this position. And as we said, if the bishop goes to c5, we're going to be playing pawn to c3. The whole idea of pawn to c3, we want to play pawn to d4 and start an attack. So he develops the knight to f6. That's the main move. Let's just go d4 here. And then once the pawn takes, we take, hit the bishop. Bishop to b4 is the best move here. Bishop back to b6 is just bad. I'm just going to start chasing away his knights. He checks the king. Now we simply need to block with the knight. This is all theoretical correct moves, by the way. If knight takes e4, we're just going to be castling our king and we're going to be doing fine. Now, d6 was played. He did not play knight takes e4, but I'm just going to get my king out the center of the board. I guess he wants to play bishop to g4. He didn't. He also decided to castle his king. And I'm thinking, do I play bishop to g5, pinning his knight? Or do I play h3, preventing his bishop from pinning my knight? That's actually a very interesting question. Now, I'm actually going to choose to play pawn to h3. I'm definitely not comfortable with a pin there. I have good control over the center of the board, so this is all I asked for. He needs to play moves like h6 or rook to e8. Rook to e8 would apply pressure here, and then h6 would prevent this. Now, I was about to say bishop takes c3 is also a move because my knight is the only piece guarding e4. But as we said, the opening that we're playing, we lose the e4 pawn a lot of times. Now, what we want to keep in mind though is if black manages to play d5, black is going to be fine. So we have to play pawn to d5 and chase away the knight. Now, the knight does not do well on the edge of the board. So if you're playing this game and you notice your opponent puts the knight on the edge of the board, that's just bad. It's usually best for them to, yeah, put the knight towards the center. He puts the knight towards the center. He's also attacking my bishop. I'm I'm actually going to take here, and then his knight is unprotected. Taking on c3 has to be bad, by the way. So let's just play rook to e1. The whole idea here is I'm down by a pawn, but what do I have in return? I have a lead in development, I have more pieces developed, and I have the bishop here. So if I lose the bishop here and the opponent managed to bring all their pieces in the game quickly, then I lose my advantage. Ooh, actually took on c. I wasn't expecting that. Am I able to just trap the knight? Like, what if I play something like queen to b3? Where's he gonna put the knight? That's crazy. That's a knight, sir. Maybe he thinks if I go here, he goes here. And if I go somewhere else, he takes here. But queen to b3, it hits the knight. It guards the pawn on b5. He's not able to guard the knight. This is just GG's. We're already ahead by a piece on move 14. Hmm. Oh, damn. B5, where did that move come from? That's a nice move. Because if I take the knight, he takes my bishop. If I takes the bishop, if I takes the pawn, and if I move my bishop, his knight is able to take on d5. That's a nice move. Okay, we're definitely not gonna take here because then it's gonna mean, wait, yeah, we're not doing that. So I'm actually going to be moving my bishop. The question is where? I'm thinking d3, and then if knight takes, bishop e4, pawn c6, bishop a3, hit the rook. Rook has to go here. What am I doing? I am able, no, I'm not able to take. I'm not able to take. I thought I was able to take for a sec, but I'm not. So I'm going to pull the bishop back, allow him to take, then I take, and then I will be threatening bishop to c6. That's a nice move, though. I'm not going to lie. That's a very nice move. Now, after knight takes d5, I may also play bishop to a3, hitting the rook, forcing the rook to move. He took with the knight. Let's go bishop to a3 first, just to gain some tempo on his rook. And then once he moves the rook, I take, attack the rook. That's actually very, very strong. I think he has to play b4 here. He has to find b4, just gambiting back the pawn. But it's crazy. Like, I'm just not going to take the pawn because I do not want to trade the pieces off the board. So if he plays b4, I'll probably just pull the bishop back, hit this pawn, and then if he guards it, I hit the knight, swing the rook in the game. And once I have more pieces in the game than him, I should definitely have an advantage. He found b4. Let's pull the bishop back. Now I have two pieces attacking this pawn. f6 guarding the pawn. I don't think he's going to play because it exposes his it allows knight to be pinned, basically, even though it could be guarded with bishop e6 and pawn c6. He plays bishop to e6, and his bishop is on the same line as my rook, as my queen. So I have to be careful about some discovered attack ideas. So let's play queen to c2 first. Let's threaten some ideas on h7. And then once he defend against the ideas on h7, then I'll take on e5. Okay, he plays g6. G6 creates dark square weaknesses around this king, and he does not have a dark squared bishop. Let me start by taking my pawn on e5. I'm now only down by 2 pawns. Now, one thing I think he needs to do is just play knight c3, give me back 1 pawn, and then he's going to be ahead by a pawn. Now, if he plays that move, I'm not going to immediately just take the knight. I may play something like a3 first, or just ignore it and swing my rook in the game. Okay, he plays pawn to b3. It is an interesting move because if I take with the pawn, he pulls knight b4, and if I play queen c3, he plays knight takes c3. No, it's not knight takes c3. It's not knight takes c3. It's queen takes d3. And if queen takes, I take. But then that's going to be good for me though, right? I mean, what else do I have though? That's the thing. I mean, I can always just play queen c5 here, or queen to d2, try to play queen h6. But I think this is working. Takes knight b4, queen c3. If knight takes c3, then my queen and my bishop is on a battery. So I'm going to play rook to d8, threatening a checkmate. And then I'm going to take his his queen. It's not a huge advantage, but I'm going to be winning material. And if queen takes, then I take, and I have the dark squared bishop. And if I'm the only one with the dark squared bishop, I definitely have an advantage. Yeah, let's take the pawn. Let's see if the tactic that he thinks he sees is very, very strong. Because knight b4, maybe he thinks he's winning material, but I have queen c3, and my bishop and my queen is targeting his weak dark squares. And remember what we said, he does not have a dark squared bishop. So he could be losing his queen here. Not an entire queen. Like I may lose a rook and a piece, but that's enough to win the game. So he took with the knight. We play queen c3. If he takes with the knight, which he did, he quickly took with the knight. Now, if I take his bishop, he's going to take my knight. So I have to play rook to d5 and attack his queen. Now, after rook to d5, I'm expecting him to take my bishop on b2, so that way he does not get checkmated. And then I'm going to take his queen, and then I'm going to take back his knight, and then I'm fine. So he took, let's simply take the queen and then take the knight. And again, it doesn't mean that I'm completely winning, but I'm no longer down by any material and I have a queen that he does not have. He moves his rook. Let's grab this pawn. I'm assuming he's going to grab this pawn. Now I'm going to play queen to f6, hitting the unprotected rook, and I'm targeting the pawn on c7. So if he's not like this super grandmaster that is able to coordinate his pieces perfectly, he's just losing. And he also has 30 seconds on the clock. So he plays rook to d8. That's a second pawn. Now we're ahead by a point, throws in a check. Let's just move. And then he plays h5. Now, I'm not seeing exactly how I'm going to win this game, but let's go king to g3 here. I'm actually trying to march my king up to h6, which would be hilarious if he allows that. He checks. Let's go king to h4. He checks again. Let's go king to g5. And now he has to play king to h7. He checks again. It's like he basically helped me to march my king up to h6 to deliver a checkmate on g7. He moves the king, but that's just a checkmate. We're going to be playing more Italian game against 1800 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1800. We're still going to be playing the Italian game. So e5, we develop the knight and we hit the pawn. Guards the pawn, jump into the Italian game. He plays knight f6. Against knight f6, we're going to play pawn to d3, not knight to c3. And then he plays h6. H6 is definitely not needed so early. Because if I wanted to play the fried liver attack, I would have played the fried liver attack. So let me just castle my king here. My king is out the center of the board. Our opponent is 1800, which means if he had played bishop c5, I probably would have played c3. He decides to play d6 though, and it is blocking out his dark squared bishop. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to be playing the stronger version of the Italian, where my beginner students, I recommend that they put the knight on c3. But once you start moving past beginner level, I recommend that you put your pawn on c3. And one reason for playing pawn to c3 is that we're not afraid of bishop to g4. My opponent plays pawn to g5. He wants to play bishop g7. Fianchetto is king. It's actually not a bad idea. I've seen persons done this, but once I don't play h3 and allow any pawn from going to g4, I should be safe. So let me just continue with my development here. Let's just go knight to d2. The whole idea is to go rook e1, knight f1, knight g3. I'm assuming that you guys understand this concept by now. Now he develops his bishop to g7. Let's go rook to e8. It's going to be one of those positional maneuvering games. He castles his king. We go knight to f1. We're going to play moves like knight to g3. I'm heading to, well, I'm hoping to get my knight on this f5 square, especially if I'm able to get rid of this bishop. But it all depends on how my opponent plays. He's not playing terrible moves so far. This is actually one of the setups in which you can use against the Italians. So I'm actually happy that this position is being played. Bishop to e6 looks like the most normal move in this situation, but I don't think, yeah, I would have captured that bishop. Bishop to g4 is pinning my knight to my queen. I don't want to play h3 so that way his bishop goes here. I actually want to play knight to g3, then h3. So that way when I play h3, the bishop won't be able to go back and he's going to be either forced to give up his bishop for a knight, which would be horrible because f5 is too weak and my knight is going to get the f5 square, or he's just going to have to pull his bishop back. Okay, d5. I just calculated d5 in my mind and that was not a good move. So here's what I'm seeing. If I take on d5, his knight take on d5. Oh, d5 is not bad actually. I thought his e5 pawn was too weak, but I forgot that he fianchetted. Ketot. So d5 is a very nice idea. I have to take on d5 though, so let's just take. And then once the knight takes, now we chase away this bishop. He's definitely not gonna take my knight. He's gonna pull the bishop back. He has to keep the bishop on the board, and I think he wants to play moves like 5 in this position. Oh my lord. He pulls his bishop back to d7. He did not ask the queen what she was doing because the queen was guarding the knight. It's no longer guarding the knight. He only needed to pull his bishop back to e6 and play f5. But that's a free knight, sir. That's crazy. 1800? And then he puts the bishop back on e6. But it's too late. Okay, no, I'll trade the bishop since you want to trade the bishops because I'm ahead by a piece. And now that his pawns are so weak looking like this, I'm going to play queen to b3, attacking the weak pawn. And then from here, we're just looking to trade pieces off the board. I want you guys to notice one key thing though. It's kind of obvious, so I don't want you to be like, "Whoa," when I say it. It's obvious. But blunders is like the key factor of winning or losing a chess game. You could be playing like Magnus Carlsen, but then you just blunder, and then it costs you the entire game. I have a lot of students like that. He took the pawn. Let's just take this pawn, where they don't play terrible chess. They play okay chess, but their issues is just the blunder. Now, let me just finish my development. Let's just go bishop e3. I'm ahead by an entire piece, so no need to be too fancy. If a trade presents itself, I'll take the trade. Otherwise, I'm going to be using my knights to cause some havoc in this position. Rook to that's the move I'm expecting. He's attacking my queen. The queen has to move, but I'm just going to pull the queen all the way back to b3 where it attacks the weak unprotected b7 pawn. My next move is rook to d1 and just getting my least active pieces in the game. So my knight is under attack. That's a free pawn, but let's not complicate the game because knight a5 could get messy. Now I'm going to use danger levels, not move my knight just yet, but just swing my rook in the game first. And then gaining a tempo on his queen. And then once he moves his queen, then I play knight to d4. So let's get my rook into the game. He is definitely forced to move the queen. In fact, a6 is the only square where he's able to put the queen and he's not going to immediately lose it. He moves the queen. Now we just need to centralize our knight. And obviously, if he trades the knight, then it's going to also allow the bishops to be traded off the board. So he needs to do something like knight e5. Like if you're down in material, you can't do anything that allows trade. Even if it puts you in a worse position, I mean, you should have played knight e5 because now I'm just going to pull my queen back. And the knight could have at least gone to the d3 square. So he plays knight c4, threatening my bishop, which I'm not going to move because I want to trade. I also have two pieces attacking his pawn on e4, which means that's a free pawn. But I think I want to play knight to f5 because the more pieces I trade off the board, the easier it is going to be for me anyways. And the e4 pawn is going to be dead anyways. So let's just play knight to f5 in this position. So that way I'm able to trade. If he takes, my rook is going to take and that is just a dead pawn. So he took, let's just take back first. I now have three pieces attacking his pawn. He only has one piece guarding the pawn, so the pawn is going to be eliminated. I'm also going to just get rid of the bishop, seeing that I'm ahead by a piece, and then just slowly trade the pieces down until I win a regular endgame. Bishop to e5 was played. We spoke about this already. That is a dead pawn, so let's take the pawn. I'm also going to be playing moves like rook d to e1, doubling up my rooks on the d file, applying pressure on his pinned bishop. If he takes my knight, then I'm just going to take back. And again, Any trade that presents itself, we're going to willingly take it. We are ahead by a piece. So after he takes the knight guards, let's just take. If the rook takes, I'm also going to take back. Whether, okay, now I'm not sure which piece to use. I think the queen is best, just so that way I centralize the queen. From here, my plan is to get my rook to his seventh rank, play moves like queen to d4 or queen to e5, and that's going to be leading to a checkmate. Okay, queen to b6 was played. He is applying pressure to my weak f2 pawn. So we definitely have to be careful. Queen to d4 just immediately wins the game, by the way, because we trade the queens off the board. But because this king is exposed, I'm trying to see if I'm able to win the game like this. So for example, play knight to f5. So that way he's not able to take on f2. Now I'm threatening queen to e5 check, or moves like rook to d7, which could threaten some checkmate. Worst case scenario, though, we can always trade the queens off the board. So this is just completely winning. Okay, so he plays queen to f6. My knight is under attack twice. So let's just play g4, guarding the knight. h5. I do not need to react to this because if he takes, I'm just going to take back. So let's go rook to d7 here. Now my rook is on his seventh rank. That's where you want your rooks, because now I'm able to get rid of all the pawns. If my knight was not on f5, then queen to h7 would be a checkmate. So that's something that I'm noticing. Okay, and then he plays queen to c6. So he's just trying to get the queens off the board. I think he sees how dangerous the position is. Now, I could check. He blocks with the queen. I could check. He also blocks with the queen. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to check here. I'm going to check here. So that way, if he blocks with the queen, I'm able to take on c7. And that way, I'm going to be threatening rook h7. And that could lead to a checkmate. Yeah, that could definitely lead to a checkmate. But he decided to block with the rook, which means we have a checkmate in two moves. His rook is no longer guarding e8. So all I need to do here is play the move rook to e8 check. The rook has to block, and that's a checkmate. But we're going to be playing more Italian game against 1900 level players. So stick around. Our opponent is now in the 1900 region. We're still going to be playing more Italian game. E5, develop the knight, hit the pawn, he guards the pawn, and now we're going to be playing the good old Italian game. Now, are we going to be seeing knight f6, or are we going to be seeing bishop to c5? Okay, we see the bishop c5 variation. And as I've been telling you guys, whenever they play bishop c5, we want to play pawn c3 followed by pawn d4. And the main move is knight f6. After knight f6, we play pawn d4. And the goal is basically to start our attack very, very quickly. Okay, he plays knight e7. Okay, guys, let me tell you guys something. You see, when you're playing against the Italian game, never put your knight on e7. Like, you could put your knight on e7 unless you want to lose the game immediately. Knight e7 is actually losing the game immediately. We're not going to play d4 and chase away his bishop. Because he plays knight e7, I'm actually going to be playing knight to g5, and it's crazy because knight g5, it's so hard for him to guard the f7 pawn. If he plays d5, I take. And if he takes his, with the knight, then it's like one variation of the fried liver attack. But if after knight g5, if he decides to castle his king, then queen h5 hits f7, hits h7, and I'm completely winning the game. So I think he has to play d5 here. And then after d5, I'll take, and after knight takes, I think I'll play d4 first, then sack. But let's see, because it's not the complete fried liver attack. But once he plays d5 and I take, it's a variation of the fried liver attack. Okay, he chose to play the d5 version. Let's take on d5, definitely taking on d5. And we're going to be sacrificing on f7. Now, it's a bit tricky because if he plays knight takes and we sack king takes check, he is actually able to play king to e6 because there's no knight c3. So that's actually it's like a slight downside. But hey, we're going to be going with it. Let's play pawn to d4 here. And pawn to d4, it allows my knight to be guarded. So if he takes, then wait, can I play queen to f3 without sacrificing the knight? No, because there's bishop e6. So he pulls the bishop back to e7. Now we're going to sack. And if king takes, we check. And then if king goes here, this has to work. Like, I'm not going to say I see everything that is happening. I'm going to play knight f7 because I know the fried liver. I know his king is not going to be safe. And I know that once I play queen f3, king e6, I'm either going to take on e5 or I'm going to castle my king. But With a king on e6, I definitely have to have something. So he took with the king. Now, if I take, his knight is under attack. But then he has bishop e6. So let's check on f3 first. Now, after king e6, I'm not able to play knight c3. So that's like the only reason why we're not in a fried liver. He didn't play king to e6, though. He plays bishop to f6, which I actually think king to e6 would have been a bit better. No, I basically got back my piece, and I'm just ahead by a pawn in this situation. His king is also in check, so he has to get out of check. Now, bishop e6 is the move that I think, yeah, I think he needs to play bishop e6. But once I take this bishop and his king takes, like, look on the king. The guy's king is on e6. King does not belong on e6. But unfortunately, I do not have any pieces in the attack. Now, I'm ahead by a pawn, but I think I'm going to focus on my development. Because if I takes, there's knight takes. I could take another pawn actually. But let's focus on my development. Let me get my king out the center of the board. The guy's king is in the center of the board. And if he takes here, okay, queen to d5 makes logical sense. Like, if your king is stuck like this, obviously you're going to want to get your king or get the queens off the board. And if I take, then he could even have a better position because then his king is going to be very active in the end game. So we're definitely not going to take. And we also know that we should not trade when we're attacking. So let's play the move queen to g4 check, checking the king, keeping the queens on the board. Maybe I should have played queen to h3 because now if I take, he has knight takes, my queen is under attack. Hmm. I need to develop my pieces. I'm thinking bishop e3, takes, knight c3, and then my development is complete. Let's do that. Let's go bishop e3, and I'm also threatening to play knight d2. Now, keep in mind that I am ahead by a pawn, but I actually want to give back the pawn so that way I can complete my development. Pawn to h5 also confirms why I should have played queen to h3 because now he's gaining tempo on my queen. If I go here, he has g6. So I think I have to pull my queen back to e2, but then there's takes, knight takes, and that's more tempo on my queen. So maybe I have to pull back to d1 or h3. I could actually play queen h3. Yeah, let's just put the queen on h3. G5 followed by G4 could be an idea of his, but maybe I'll play queen to F5. I'll probably even take on E5 here. So he took, let's just take back. As I mentioned before, I want to give him back the pawn and in return get my pieces developed. Because if I'm able to complete my develop and even get my rooks in the game, then he's toast, toast. So he didn't decide to take back the pawn. He instead got his rook in the game. Let me develop my knight, applying some pressure to his queen, which now has to move. And then putting the queen to e6 would be a blunder, trying to trade the queens, because I would actually trade the queens and then end with a fork. So he has to find a safe square for the queen. And then from there, I'm thinking, do I play d5 and attack the knight, or do I swing my rooks that are not doing anything in the game? So the queen went back to d6. That's an attacking move on the queen, which hits the queen and threatens c7. Now we could go queen here, and then if I take, okay, queen there is actually not good. If I attack the queen, where does the queen go? That's the question. Back to d8? Maybe b4? Yeah, queen d6 looks weird to me. Let's go knight b5. We have to attack. Keep in mind, his king is not safe and his rook is not in the game. Otherwise, his pieces are active. My rooks are not in the game. So I want to get my rooks in the game, but if I could do it and attack at the same time, then that would be crazy. So I'm not seeing a good square for his queen, especially if he wants to keep his c7 pawn guarded. If he wants to keep the c7 pawn guarded, yeah, he has to put the queen on some squares like e7. And now I hit him with d5. And then once he moves the knight, I go rook c1. And then the pieces are just coming in like this with tempo. That's how you want to be playing. You want your moves to be coming with tempo. Another move that I'm thinking of is actually bishop f4, which applies some pressure here as well. So maybe it's bishop f4, rook c8, push, knight here, then rook c1. Or do I play d5, knight here? Let's just play d5. I'm leaning towards d5. If he takes on b2, I'm just going to take the knight and then take the bishop, and I'm winning. So knight e5, rook c1, apply pressure here. Plus there's also ideas of bishop c5 hits the queen, rook e1, get all the pieces in the game. Yeah, I think this is where I'm now winning. So he did play knight to e5. Now we play rook to c1, getting our pieces in the game with tempo. Ensure you're using the chess words. Ensure that you're speaking the chess language. And it's hard for him to get this rook in the game. Now, if I could find a way to get this rook in the game quickly, then all my pieces are active and then my attack immediately started. That's a pawn. I'm threatening to win his queen. So he plays queen to b4. My knight is under attack. If I take on c7 with check, he's just going to move the king. And then what do I have? So we're not going to take on c7 with check. We're going to take on c7 with the knight, hit the rook, force the rook to move. And then after that, we decide what we're doing. I think if he manages to play queen g4, he's going to trade the queens off the board. But I'm already ahead by a pawn. Taking here, attacking the rook, means that I'm ahead by 2 pawns. So I'm going to welcome the trade. Plus, he has to move the rook first. If rook e7, I'm strongly considering d6, even though the queen is able to take, because it allows my f rook to be swing in the game with tempo. Ensure that you understand what tempo means. Tempo means it's a free move. If you gain a tempo on someone, you get the move. Now he plays rook to d8. Guy's gone mad. Queen to e6 check. If king back, bishop c5, and I win the queen. Queen to e6 check, but then he has king to g6, man. He has king to g6. Hmm. I could also play knight e6, attack the rook. Then he takes on d5. Then I check. King is still running. Check here. Hmm, that's interesting. All right, let's go with this. This is interesting. Let's go knight to e6. Hit the rook, sack the pawn. That's a pass pawn. That's a very strong pawn that I'm sacrificing. Now, after he blocks with the rook, we play rook to c7, check. So now we're gaining some more tempo. If he puts the king here, then I have this. He blocks with the rook, however, and knight to g5 is what I'm about to play. I'm going to play knight g5 check. If bishop takes, I take his rook with check first, and it should at least lead to something. So and the reason why I'm going to play knight to g5 is because my queen and my rook now attack his rook. So let's go knight g5 check. If he moves the king, I just take. If he takes, I take. It depends on where he puts the king. He could also put the king here, but then I take. I go here. So he took with the bishop. Okay, where's my advantage? Okay, let's take the rook with check. Knight has to take. Now the question is, do I take the bishop or do I take the knight? If I take the knight, if he takes, I take with check. That's going to be winning. Well, that's a check anyways. If he blocks with the queen, hmm, Picks. Hit the knight. Maybe knight here. Let's take the knight since it's a check. I think he's gonna. Oh, if he blocks with the queen, queen to d5, because then there's check here. I hit the king and the bishop, so that's a nice move. So he decided to block with the bishop. Now I need to get my pieces in the game. Quick, 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 quick. Bishop to g6 applies pressure to the pin bishop. Um, I need to get my rook in the game though. I think I need to just quickly get my rook in the game. Yeah, let's just play rook to d1. We both have 1.5 minutes on the clock. But I think his time is going to be running out quicker than mine because he's the one in the defensive position. Rook to d8 was played. That's a nice move. If I did not have this check, which checks the king, hit the pawn, he moves the king, and check takes, and then I mated, so can't do that. Check. Okay, what to play here? Okay, let's check. He moves. Let's give a check here. Hit the king, hit the bishop. If he puts the king here, I take with check. Tempo is important. For example, if he puts the king here and I take the bishop, I'm getting checkmated. That's the reason why I have to take the pawn with check, and that's a tempo. Now the king goes here. If I check, he goes back here. Still can't take the bishop. So let's play pawn to g3 first. Now I'm threatening to check and win the bishop. We're ahead by 2 pawns, by the way. My pawn on b2 is untouchable because of his unprotected bishop. So now he protects his bishop. Okay, now let's give a check here. We're now in the endgame, so it's very important that we centralize the queen. He moves the king. Let's play b3. Now my pawns are safe. If he checks, I go king here. He has no more checks. Both of his pawns are hanging. I'm about to be ahead by 3 pawns. I guess knight e7 was not as bad as I thought. But now I'm ahead by what? 3 pawns. He has no checks on my king. Pawn to b5 was played. And let's just go back and then I'm going to play h4. This is just going to be a slow grind. I have two pawns versus one pawn here. So my goal is to create a pass pawn here. And I have three pawns versus one pawn here. So my goal is to create two pass pawns over there. So since he put his queen here, let's take this pawn. Yes, we're trading the pawns, but I have a pass pawn. So what am I going to do? I'm going to move my queen back to d5, centralize the queen, ensure that there's no checks on my king, and we're going to be rolling the pass pawns. Why? Because pass pawns must be pushed. From here, we're in the end game, roll the pass pawns. That's all we're doing. He moves the queen, roll the pass pawn. Moves the bishop, roll the pass pawn. Pass pawns must be pushed. Now, how do we convert this game into a win? Okay, let's go here, putting the bishop on this diagonal, hitting his g7 weak point as well. He moves the king. Now I should be able to, okay, I have to be careful. Okay, let's play h4, then h5, then king up, then h6. And I'm going to, well, he lost on time. We're going to be playing more Italian games though, against 2000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 2000. We're still going to be playing the Italian game. He plays e5. We hit the pawn. Okay, he plays bishop to c5 first. I think this was a mistake because he meant to play knight c6. So I'm going to still play the Italian game. And once he plays knight to c6, it's going to transpose into the regular line. So it's like I hit the pawn, he guards the pawn, bishop c4, he plays bishop c5. Now, against bishop c5, as we said, I recommend that you guys play the move pawn to c3. The whole idea of playing pawn to d4. This is all mainline theoretical stuff. Very, very aggressive way to play. Once they take, we take back, hit the bishop. He has to find bishop to b4 check this early on. So anything that is not bishop to b4 check, we chase the knight around the board. Now that he plays bishop to b4 check, we play the move knight c3, blocking the check. It is gambiting the e4 pawn, by the way, but this is what we want. We want them to take the pawn on e4, and then we're just going to castle the king. And the whole idea is we're going to have such a huge lead in development. We're going to attack them. So he did take the pawn. This is what we said. I want you guys to notice how he's moving his knight more than once in the opening stage of the game. I'm going to be using this time to get my king out the center of the board. Now, we are actually gambiting a second pawn, but taking the second pawn is actually losing the game immediately. No, actually, if he takes the second pawn, he's losing the game immediately. Now, after bishop takes e3, and this is where things gets interesting. Now, we're still on the main line. This is actually every move that black should be playing correctly. So if you're seeing this, black is playing correctly. You should not take back the bishop. If they take with the knight, then you take back the bishop because you gain the tempo. If you take back the bishop, they're going to play pawn to d5, immediately attack your bishop, and black is actually doing fine. So after a move like bishop takes e3, you want to play pawn to d5, not taking back the bishop, because now two pieces are still under attack. So we're still going to be regaining our piece. And what we want the initiative. We want to attack. In fact, black has to find the main move here, which is bishop back to f6. Knight e5 is also a move, but bishop back to f6 is actually one of the hardest moves to play against. But if he plays bishop back to f6, I'm going to be showing you guys how to deal with it. Okay, he pulls the knight back to e7. This is a sign that he's just not familiar with the opening theory. So once the knight goes back to e7, we obviously have to just take back our bishop. And the good thing is, he's not necessarily able to take a free pawn on c3 because the knight is going to be unprotected. Queen d4, hit the unprotected knight, hit the pawn. In this situation, he just needs to prioritize getting his king out the center of the board. He instead decided to play pawn to d6 though. So I mean, things could get a bit dicey. Now, the whole idea of what's happening here is my king is out the center of the board. His king is still in the center of the board. So I want to ensure that every move that I play from now on is an attacking move. Now, because of the opening that I chose, all my pieces are already active. So this is the first target in our half of the board, and we're going to be using it to start our attack. Let's play the move queen to d4, attacking the unprotected knight, forcing the knight to move, and then once he saves the knight, we're going to just continue trying to play more attacking and aggressive move to either keep his king in the center of the board, or if for some reason he find a magic way to castle his king, we at least try to destroy his castled king. And that's how we're going to be winning the game. So he pulls the knight back to f6. He's clearly trying to castle on the next move. Again, we have to ensure that our move is so forcing where, because The only way I could legally prevent him from castling is by playing bishop to b5 check. He's gonna push, takes. I have to move my bishop. He castles. I'm just done by a pawn. However, I want to play a move like bishop to g5. Development is important. Putting pieces on the opponent's half is important, and maintaining the initiative. And by the way, guys, I want you guys to be using the words that I'm using so that way you expand your chess vocabulary. So I want you guys to be using words like tempo, initiative, pins. Even if you say PP on the PP, like use those words. And for the persons who do not know the coordinates, please know the coordinates. Like if I close my eyes and I'm like, hey, what color is the C5 square? You're supposed to say black. What color is the A1 square? Black. What color is the F3 square? White. Like if you ask me any of these questions, I just know them. That's how I want you guys to know the chessboard. He decides to play h6, which that's probably the one of the only moves that I think he could have tried. It still doesn't work. I actually just didn't know what worked because if he castle, I was going to take the knight. If he moves the knight, I was going to take here. If he tries to put the knight here, I was going to apply pressure here. So he plays h6. Now we're basically getting back our pawn. If you anytime get back your pawn and keep the guy's king in the center at the same time, you're just winning. So let's just take the pawn. Well, let's take the knight first on f6. And once he takes back, we could take the pawn. Do we want the pawn? Do I want the pawn? Why not? It's a pawn. Let's take the pawn, attacking the unprotected rook. I definitely assumed that he was going to play rook to g8, putting his rook on the same line as my king. So I have to be somewhat careful in that scenario. Now, I'm thinking of rook to e1 here, applying some pressure to his pinned knight. And if he plays rook to g6, I should be able to play queen to h8 check. If he plays any other move, well, I could also play bishop to b5 check. And if he blocks with the pawn, knight takes because the knight is going to be pinned. And then if he blocks with the bishop, though, there's a lot of stuff that is happening here. Maybe I should just take the free pawn on h6, but I want to aim to get more of my pieces in the game. So he did find rook to g6, hitting my queen, protecting his pawn. If I check here, he moves the king to d7. With that being said, I'm going to check here first. So that way, if he blocks with the bishop, then I check here. So there's no more king d7. If I check, if he blocks with the pawn, oh, if he blocks with the pawn, I'm not able to take the pawn. But then I could check here. And then once he goes king up, then I check here. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So let's give a check here. It's a bit tricky. Like anything could happen here, but I definitely think I'm winning. So blocking with the pawn, my queen is under attack, but I have a check. He moves the king, we take. Pawn takes. Oh, he decides, oh, he puts his king on f8. Okay, he puts his king on f8. Yeah, I'm at least winning a pawn here. I'm going to give a check here. Because if he blocks with the knight, he moves his knight away from the e file and then check on e1 wins the queen. But then if he blocks with the rook, hits my queen, I take on h6, picking up the pawn. So let's give a check on h8 in this position. And remember that, guys, I actually regained my pawn. So I'm not ahead by a pawn. So me winning a pawn now is just clear that I'm winning. Because if I was down by a pawn with this position, I would still feel as if I'm winning. So the fact that I'm gonna be ahead by a pawn, plus his king is weak, plus his development is not complete. Like, what more can I ask for? Well, what more can I ask for? Maybe a queen, because he just gave me a queen. He blocks with his knight. This is called a fork. My bishop covers the e8 square. His queen and his rook is on the same line. Hit him with rook to e8 check. He has to sack the queen. Then we simply take his queen and we're winning the game. He took with the king. I only have one piece on the chessboard that is not doing anything, and that's my a1 rook. Let's swing the rook in the game with check. And from here, I'm just going to try to cook up a checkmating attack. So he moves the king, not seeing a lot of ways to do this, but knight to h4 attacks his rook. Knight h4, he has rook to f6 actually. So, hmm, how to win this? Let's go knight d4. Like we can't go wrong if we centralize the knight. I'm ahead by 1 point, by the way. So it doesn't mean that I have the biggest advantage in the world. It's quite a decent advantage though. Bishop h3, I was definitely expecting that move because his rook is on the same line as my king. He's threatening to take on g2. But once I push the pawn to g3, there's no real attack there. In fact, his bishop becomes an unprotected piece, which means it could be a target later down in the game. He plays pawn to a6, very good move because I wanted to play knight b5, attacking this weak pawn. Now, I still need to find a way to get my pieces active, get my pieces in the game, give my pieces some work to do. So I'm actually going to play the move rook to b1, taking my rook off this open file, putting it on this semi-open file because it attacks a pawn. And if he pushes the pawn, now he's creating some weaknesses. Now my pieces could enjoy more squares in his half of the board. Let's play knight to c6. Now my knight is on his half of the board. This is also an outpost because he has no pawns that is able to attack my knight. So I just need to have my knight coordinate with the rest of my pieces. He plays rook to e8, which is a very good move. I actually shouldn't have allowed his rook to get access to this file. Now, I definitely need to trade some pieces off the board. I don't think my queen is as active on the back rank anymore, and need to give my queen something better than that to do as well. Queen d4, I'm thinking of, not seeing what it does exactly. Let's play a4 here, actually. Let's play a4 now. He kind of has to take the pawn, but at least I could say my rook gets the open file, and then when I pull my queen back to d4, I will be able to take the pawn on a4. Okay, so he decided to pull his bishop back instead. So let's just go here and guard the pawn. I only have 2 minutes on the clock, so I have to start playing a bit fast. Bishop to d3 was played. He's trying to cover up what's happening here. Let's just take. If he takes with the bishop, I could go knight d4 and hit the bishop. Let's do that because I'm honestly not seeing exactly what my knight is doing. Like it's active, but not seeing what it's doing. So he moves the bishop. He is also attacking my unprotected pawn. But then if he takes the pawn, I should be able to. Oh, I won't be able to take his pawn. I need to be careful here. Let's go knight to f5. And if he takes, I'm going to go knight e3, hit the bishop. Now, my knight is going to be attacking his bishop. My rook is going to be attacking his pawn. Or I could go queen to d4, hitting the bishop. I'm actually leaning towards queen to d4. Let's play knight e3. Like, I'm not comfortable with the fact that this rook is able to come in. So I'm actually not ahead by an entire point. Well, not after I take here. Now I'm ahead by a point again. I think he's going to play rook to b8 now, trying to infiltrate on the back rank. If rook to b8, I may just pull my rook back. Okay, let's pull the rook back. He wants to find a checkmate there. Like, I'm not moving my queen because his knight is pinned. Okay, c5 definitely weakens some squares. Let's play c4. d6 is just weak. I have 1 minute 39 seconds on the clock though. So I need to be active and I need to ensure that my rook is as active as possible. And I also need to do something about my king. I don't think it's safe. Like, well, my king is safe, but I don't think I'm able to move my pieces freely because I have to be worried about checkmates and also I'm probably gonna play okay, he push. Let's just take or just play queen d5, hit the rook first. But let's just take. That's just a pawn. It's a free pawn. Maybe he's trying to push it. Oh, he's trying to do this and then check here. And then that's gonna lead to a mate. That's not a bad try. Okay, how do we prevent this now? Hit the bishop, hit the rook. How do we prevent this? Time is also running out. Push, block. Okay, that's a nice move. Oh, queen a7. Yo, I had to find queen a7. I had to find queen a7. He's threatening rook to b1, and queen to h7 just prevents his rook from going to b1. Had to find that move. Now I'm ahead by 2 points. I need to play h3 and g4 so that way my king can escape on the dark squares. Because for now, his bishop is doing a very good role covering the light squares. Queen to f5 is definitely coming as well because I need to get rid of this bishop that is on my half of the board. The knight is no longer pinned, but if he plays knight f6, I will probably take with check, but then I'm worried about the same thing, and my queen is no longer an h7. So knight f6, I probably need to play queen to f5, guard a pawn, and hit the bishop. So he puts the rook here instead. Now we're gonna play h3, followed by g4, and then we have no more background issues to worry about. So he's pushing his pawn. Let's go here, hit the bishop. That was our initial plan. And once we force the bishop away, we can also think of rook to a7, putting our rook on his seventh rank. Now, I have to ensure that I'm not getting checkmated myself. So well, I think he kind of has to move the bishop though. So if he puts the bishop here, then I'm not getting mated. Then I'm able to do this. Oh, but then he moves the rook. What? That's a bishop, bro. Maybe he thinks his bishop was trapped or something. Okay, he's pushing his pass pawn. Not bad. Let me. Oh, wait. I have to go here. Have to go there. I don't want him to be able to push the pass pawn. And I have 45 seconds on the clock, so I have to be clean with it as well. Maybe queen c2. He hits the queen. Actually, let's go here. Threatening some stuff here. If c2, my queen is still guarding it. And I could also push my pass pawn as well. He's not the only one with a pass pawn. I can definitely win this in 40 seconds. Okay, knight g6, that's a free pawn, but let's push the pass pawn. Pass pawns must be pushed. That's a free pawn with check, by the way. I can always take that whenever. And anytime the pawn goes to c2, I'm just going to take it. Even if I have to sacrifice my knight, I'll still be completely better. Okay, so he gives the check with the rook. We have to take. Once his other rook takes, we play king to g2. If he pushes the pawn, I'm just going to take. So trading there was not the best. His time is now running out, so I guess he's panicking. He pulls the rook back. He wants my pawn. Do I just push or do I take? Let's take on h6 first. Checking his king. He moves the king. If I push, he's gonna take. So let's go here. Let's protect the pawn. I don't want him taking my pawn. Now, if he could push though, but my queen is actually covering the square. So, or I could check here. Check the king, hit the rook. But I won't be able to take his rook unless he allows me to take with check. So, for example, if he puts the king here, I can't take. Wait. Takes. If he queens, I check. He has to block with the queen, and then that's going to be a checkmate. So I can take. And then once he queen, all I need to do is check. Now I check here. He has to block with the queen, and that's a checkmate.